All right. Well, welcome to Advent 2024, huh? I about said 2025. Got ahead of myself there. It is good to see everybody. How many had a great Thanksgiving? All right. How many of you overate just a frack? Anybody? We had ribs this year instead of turkey. Solid idea. Pork chops over here. Anybody else have an alternative turkey? Ribs and fish? And what? And turkey. Ribs, fish, and turkey? Wow. You didn't even invite me over. That sounds better than just ribs. All right, great. And how many had family in, traveled, all that fun stuff, made it back? I know we had the Hershey's, they're on kid duty, and they were in Pennsylvania all week and still came in and worked in the nursery. So, yeah, so it's good stuff. And I'm excited about this Advent season. I'm looking forward to talking about what we're going to talk about. In Matthew chapter number 1, we see the genealogy of Jesus. So we see what's normally a very, boring maybe thing that we kind of glance over. You guys, how many just, when you get to the genealogy section, the Old Testament, or you get to one of the genealogies, you're just like, yeah, whatever. So-and-so begat so-and-so, so-and-so begat so-and-so, so-and-so begat so-and-so, right? And so I'm not used to having this thing in the middle here, so I'm going to burn some calories this morning, walking back and forth, which I definitely need to do after this past week. So there's something very interesting in Matthew's genealogy, though. Matthew's genealogy is interesting because of who's in it, but it's also interesting because of who the book of Matthew was primarily written to, and that was the Jews. It was a book primarily written to the Jews to tell the story of Jesus. And very interestingly, there are 4 women mentioned in Matthew's genealogy. There's Tamar, there is Rahab, there is Ruth, and there is Bathsheba, who are all mentioned. Bathsheba is not mentioned by name, but Uriah's wife is mentioned. So that's very interesting that there's 4 women mentioned, and then Mary, obviously, at the end. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the lives of each of these women through the month of Advent and look at their lives in accordance to the words that correspond to Advent. And when we look at that, the other interesting thing about these women that are mentioned is that 3 out of the 4 are Gentiles, and the other one was at least married to a Gentile. We're not sure if she was a Gentile or not. In other words, not Jewish, which is a big deal to put in a book written primarily to the Jews to tell the story of Jesus. And it's interesting to me that it would seem that what Jesus was doing was Jesus was shifting the narrative big time, right? Jesus did things in such a way that always made us think. It always made us stop and look and rethink things, and he framed things much differently. And he would say things like, "You've heard it said," and quoting scripture, by the way, "You heard it said, but I say." You heard it said, but I say. And he was always shifting our understanding more toward who God really is. And I think it's a great thing to sit back and take a look at the roles that these women played in the formation of who we are today. And we have, and there's a lot of different ways to think about women and their roles in the church and different things like that, right? I mean, how many of you have been in church world and you understand that that's a thing? There's a lot of different ways to look at it. And a lot of people are come to different conclusions about how that should be expressed in the church. But regardless of what our expressions will be of that, it cannot be an expression of worth. In other words, it's not that men are worth more than women or men are smarter than women. We all know that's not the case at all. But in churches, if we're not careful, we give that vibe off, right? That the men are the ones that we're the leaders and the women just have to fall in line. And I don't think that's what Jesus was telling us. Matter of fact, in this church, there's a lot of great leaders And a lot of those great leaders are women. A lot of the people that I work with, I'm not going to try to name every great woman leader in here because it would take too much time, but I do work with some women here in the church quite a bit that are amazing leaders. I sit on a committee that's chaired by Erica Strouser right over here, and she's a great leader, does a great job, and does things. Sometimes she's made me go, ooh, I'd have never been brave enough to say that. I've told her that, like, I'm glad you handled it. I'm glad you're the leader, because I probably would have wimped out on that one, you know. And I've seen her just step up, lead, and do an amazing job. Janine Toomey, she's always in the office helping us with figuring out stuff. Husband, a little sketchy, but that's all right. And I'm just going by what she tells me. But but she's a great leader that's always there, and is a quiet leader that always gets things done and done well, and we can always count on her, never have a question. I think my wife fits in that category. She's a great leader, except today she's skipping church, still in bed. But anyway, had a little too much fun on Thanksgiving. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's been 3 days. She's over that. But she's a great leader. She's a great leader, and she steps up, and she's not afraid to ruffle feathers, and she's not afraid to tell me to be quiet, and she's not afraid to do any of that stuff. She's a good leader. And Alyssa Scott, just an amazing leader that leads our kids, and those are the people that I work with directly, that I'm every bit is valuable, every bit is, there's no, in other words, there's no hierarchy here when it comes to that. There's no hierarchy of worth when it comes to that. You know, and I think Jesus was telling us that hey, we've got to shift our brains into understanding that all of us are a part of God's ongoing plan. All of us are. And all of us are just as important in that process, right? And so today we're going to talk about the first one in the light of hope, Tamar's story. The power of active hope. And these stories are wild, by the way. These stories are wild. I mean, this is not something she didn't do, and you'll see, what she does isn't something that I would have recommended to handle the situation that she was in. But I love the fact that she didn't just sit back and let life pass her by. She decided to get up and do something about it. She decided to take action. She decided that her hope wasn't going to be passive any longer. It was going to be active. I'm going to do everything I can, but then I'm going to trust that God will just have His way. Right? I'm going to have faith in God that He's going to do whatever works out best, but in the meantime, I'm going to do what I can and that I have the power to do to make it happen. And whether it happens or not, I don't have control of that, but I can do everything I can do to set it up, right? So we'll talk about that. So Tamar's story, let's get into it. Let's have a word of prayer. God, thank you so much for what you've given us in your word. God, this amazing genealogy that kind of hits us in the face with things that we don't expect that would be in there, especially when written so long ago. And God, thank you for that. And so God, as we go through these stories, God, speak to our hearts right where we need spoken to. Inspire us. Give us the motivation that we need, God, to get out maybe from underneath an attitude of victimhood or an attitude of something that would, of a defeatist mentality, God. Just hoping that one day, once we finally die, that life will get better. God, help us to seize the moment now that you've given us with the breath in our lungs, the talent that you've given us, God, the smarts that you've given us, and the people that you've put around us. And so, God, just be with us today. Speak to us right where we need spoken to. In Jesus' name, amen. So, Genesis chapter 38. Now, this is interesting where it's placed because Genesis 37 is the story of Joseph and his brothers, right? And we have everything from the introduction of Joseph, the dreams that he has, and then his brothers not liking him very well, and then his brothers selling him away and faking his death, right? That's in 37. 39, we've got Joseph arriving in Egypt and getting sold into Potiphar's house, and then his whole story keeps going. But in 38, we've got this little chapter that just tells this story, kind of in the middle of everything, that doesn't really seem even to fit in all that well. But here's the story. It says, we see a hopeful beginning. It says this, at that time, Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with a man of Adullam named Hira. Now, Judah was one of the sons of Abraham, right? Sons of Jacob. And he was a son of Israel, firstborn. He's the one that's going to be in the line of Jesus. And so at that time, Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with a man of Adullam named Hira. I think Reuben was firstborn, actually. But anyway, he was born. Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with a man, Adullam and Hira. There, Judah met the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua. Love at first sight. These guys really liked Canaanite women. So he met this woman named Shua. He married her and made love to her. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son who was named So if you're pregnant, or just wondering, need a name, I think it's beautiful. Beautiful. Monosyllabate, easy to remember. Anyway, just an idea, just tossing it. All right. She conceived again and gave birth to a son and named him Onan, another viable option. She gave birth to still another son and named him Shelah. It was at Kizib that she gave birth to him. So, this is Judah's family. Got the three sons, Onan, and Shelah, right? And then Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. So we see Tamar comes on the scene. She's married, and it's a great thing, right? I mean, you're married, and it's exciting. That's an exciting part of life, and man, you just can't wait. You come in, and then this happens. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. All right, so not so good, right? That went sideways. So gets put to death. So Tamar marries Judah's firstborn, God puts to death, whatever that means. All right, so now we see passive hope, because now she's in this family, right? She's in this family, and the custom was for the younger brother, if there were no children born to the family, the custom was the younger brother comes in and fulfills the duties of the firstborn to make sure that his seed gets passed down. Right? That was the tradition. That's what was supposed to happen. And I'm not going to read you this next section. You're welcome. But I will explain it in a short thing here. Onan, younger brother, refused to do his duty, so God kills him. All right? So basically, he's told to come in and fulfill the role of her first husband who died, and make sure she has children. He circumvents this process, and God kills him too. Okay? So now if you're Judah, and you have three sons, and you've given two of them to Tamar, and they're both dead, what are you thinking? I know what I'm thinking. I'm keeping my other son away from her. Right? There's a problem here, and I can't take the risk. I'm not going to do it. And you can imagine, I mean, we kind of talk it over and glance through it, but can you imagine the grief involved? I mean, can you imagine the difficulty that Judah was having with this whole process? And again, this section's called passive hope, because now Tamar is just sitting here waiting on the next brother, So here's what happens. Judah then said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Live as a widow in your father's household until my son Shelah grows up." For he thought, he may die too, just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's household. So he sends her away and says, just wait till Shelah grows up and becomes of age, and then I'll marry you off to him too. And he's like, no, I won't. Yeah, that's not happening in a million years. Going back to your father's house. Well, what was the main thing for a family, especially a woman in this society? If you were barren, you were nobody. You were looked at as if you were cursed, because that was your purpose in life, was to have a family. And now she's sitting here waiting to fulfill her purpose at the whim of somebody else who thinks she's a bad luck charm for his last kid, and he's not about to let Shelah get anywhere near her, and she's shipped off just waiting passively, hoping that somehow this happens. That's passive hope, right? I'm hoping, but I'm just going to sit back. It's like saying, that looks better. It's like saying, I've got an issue. Let's say, I don't know what it is, whatever it is. Think of your issue. You got plenty. I have an issue. And let's say it's an addiction of some sort. And I keep just sitting there hoping that it goes away. Hoping that I stop doing it. Hoping that I stop getting the urges. Hoping that, but yet I'm not doing anything about it. You can sit there and hope and pray all you want. Maybe by some miraculous thing God decides to take it away. But chances are, let's say smoking. I don't know if there's any smokers in here or not. You don't have to raise your hands. So that reminds me of a kind of a joke. No, I can't. There's a church in West Virginia. It's a true story, but it's not a true story. Their last name were smokers, and there was a smoker family. And in West Virginia, they said back then, if you were leaving the church, the family would go back in the back, and everybody would shake their hands as they were going to say bye. And he said, "Would the smokers please go out into the lobby?" And 90% of the church got up and went to the lobby. But anyway. Where was I? So smoking. So if you're a smoker and you want to quit, and you just say, "I want to quit. I really hope one day I quit. I really hope I quit," you're probably never going to quit. But there are steps that you can take to try to facilitate that. And there's things that you can do to make it more likely that you can quit. But we're never guaranteed of the outcome. But there are steps that we can do, right? If you're not feeling well because you've kind of let yourself go, then there's things that you can do. You say, "No, it's too far gone." Well, can you walk from down the hallway? Can you walk around the block? There's things that we can all do. We're not just going to sit back and say, "Oh, I hope I feel better." Well, I hope I feel better. I hope I feel better. Yeah, you can hope all day long, but the truth is there's things that you can do that can help you potentially feel better. Right? The difference between passive hope and active hope. And so she's sitting there waiting on this to happen. Nothing's happening. She's just waiting. Nothing's happening. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. So Judah's wife that we had the kids with passes away. When Judah had recovered from his grief, he went up to Timnah to the men who were shearing the sheep, and his friend Hira, the Adullamite, went with him. So they go up, and they're going where the sheep is sheared. When Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is on his way to Timnah to shear his sheep," she took off her widow's clothes, covered herself with a veil to disguise herself, and then sat down at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah, for she saw that, though Shelah had now grown up, she had not been given to him as his wife. She decided that this hasn't happened. My hopes and dreams aren't going to happen if I just sit back and let the world pass me by, so I'm going to do something about it. She takes off those garments, puts on a different outfit, and we'll see what that outfit was here in just a second. And she goes down, but what this is, she shifted from passive hope to active hope. She said, it's out of my control what the results are. It's out of my control what ultimately is going to happen. We know that, and we know now that all things are working together for good, but we don't know how what that means. Our idea of good and our idea of what our plans are to be and our idea of the way we think life can turn out may not be what God has in mind. I think we've all seen that, right? But we can trust and have faith in the truth that what is happening, even though it may hurt, even though we may not understand it, even though it may cause us grief, it may cause tears, it may cause heartache, it may cause questions, it may cause a lot of other things, even though we know that, deep down, we can have the trust and the faith to know that somehow, some way, it's all going to be made right. Right? But we don't just sit back with that in mind and let life pass us by. We need to, what can we do? This hope that's in us, that truth that's in us, this gospel, this good news that's come in and changed our life, and we are not victims. We are not people that are just, the world isn't going the way I think it should go, and I'm just going to be depressed, and I'm just going to sit and I'm going to fire off mean tweets and rantings on Facebook about how the world's falling apart and nothing's going my way and all this stuff. Shut up. That's not what we are as born again, life-given people that have the Holy Spirit of God within us. What can we do with the hope that's been placed in us? We can go out and do something, right? If we don't like the way the world's going, go knock on your neighbor's door and get to know him, right? Find that coworker that you need to apologize to. I don't know, maybe, and or that you just haven't been hitting with, and be interested in their life. Make a difference. I love when I see active hope. Active hope is so inspiring. I talked to Joel on Tuesday this week, and right before he's getting out of the hospital, the guy that you saw in the video has cancer, riddled with cancer. It's a difficult situation. There's not a lot of hope for long-term life here in the way we see it. There's not a lot of hope there. But what he told me was this. He said, you know what, Trevor? He said, I want every single person that walks into my room and visits me. He was in the hospital at the time. I want every single person that walks into this room to walk away encouraged. Active hope. You know why he wants to do that? Because he has a hope within him, and it's not passive. He's not just sitting back hoping that he gets better. He's real about all of that, but what he is saying is, I do have a hope that's bigger than just this life, and I want every single person that walks in here to see it, to hear it, to feel it, and to walk out feeling better about themselves. That's inspiring. I think of Jaden, actually. I thought about this. And Jaden, he talks way too much, but I'm just kidding. He's not going to express this, and forgive me, Jaden, you can smack me later, but he is not going to tell you about this. But I've seen this kid go through some rough stuff. His whole family go through some difficult things. And he's born without arms. And just to watch him do what he does is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He sits down and paints the most amazing pictures you've ever seen. And I first saw this when his brother passed away last year, and I saw he painted a picture for his brother, and it was so inspiring to see somebody just say, you know what, I'm going to use my gifts and talents to express what is in my heart, even in the hard times. I'm not letting my hope be passive. My hope is active, and because he has allowed that to come out and be expressed, how many of you have been inspired by it? How many of you have his paintings hanging in your house now? Because it's so inspiring. He came here. The whole community's been inspired because of active hope. Active hope. There's a guy named Praying Hyde. I don't think that was his given, but they called him Praying Hyde. He was a missionary to India. And he was in the middle of the sea sailing back in the day, and this is like the 1890s or something. And he got in the doldrums. You guys know what the doldrums are? Basically, the wind stops blowing. And people can die when you're sailing and the wind stops blowing for long enough. You can't get anywhere. Your food runs out, your water runs out, and you don't make it. And so they knew he had the reputation of praying and things, amazing things happening. And he was in the ship, and the captain of the ship came down and said, we need you to pray for the wind. And he said, tell your men to put the sails up. And he said, it's too much work to put the sails up. He said, well, then I'm not going to pray for wind if you're not ready for the wind to happen. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like let's take this beautiful thing that's been given to us, and let's not just sit on it and sit there, well, I can't wait till heaven. I can't wait till heaven. And I probably shouldn't be disparaging to people that think like that, but if you sit there and you're like, I just can't wait, this life is, listen, man, we've got this beautiful life to live right here. If it's a week more, or if it's 20, 30, 40, 50 years more, we've got a beautiful life to live. Let's get out and live it. Let's let this hope come out of us into the lives of other people so they can see what's happened to us and be inspired by our gifts and talents as we say, wow, let's live out loud, right? And that's what I take from the life of Tamar. Now, again, I'm not condoning the way she does this. Here's what she does. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute. If your kids are still here, you might have some things to talk about. I might bring up some questions that you don't want brought up. But when Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. Not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, he went over to her by the roadside and said, come now, let me sleep with you. And what will you give me to sleep with you, she asked. I'll give you a young goat from my flock, he said. Will you give me something as a pledge until you send it, she asked. He said, what pledge should I give you? Your seal and its cord and the staff in your hand, she answered. These are things that identified you as who you were. It was the seal and cord of his family. There would be no doubt that whose it was, and his staff, right? And so he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. After she left, she took off her veil and put on her widow's clothes again. That's a wild story. It gets wilder. Meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat by his friend, the Adullamite, in order to get his pledge back from the woman. But he did not find her. He asked the men who lived there, where is the shrine prostitute who was beside the road at Enaim? There hasn't been any shrine prostitute here, they said. So he went back to Judah and said, I didn't find her. Besides, the men who lived there said, there hasn't been any shrine prostitute here. Then Judah said, let her keep what she has, or we will become a laughingstock. After all, I did send her this young goat, but you didn't find her. Let's just hope this goes away. Right? About 3 months later, however, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of prostitution, and as a result, she's now pregnant. uh-oh, right? He doesn't like her anyway. As far as he's concerned, she's the reason his 2 sons are dead. And she's going to keep bugging him about the younger son that he's not about to give her to. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to rid himself of this. Judah said, bring her out and have her burned to death. Bring her out and have her burned. Now, that's pretty serious. It's not stoned. That's a whole other level of angry than you often see in the Old Testament. Right? Burned. That's when you're really mad. Right? Have her burned to death. And now listen. She decided to take action. She decided to say, hey, my hope is in a family and it's not going to happen, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dress this way. I know my father-in-law's coming down the road this way, and I'm going to play the part of this prostitute. And how could she know that he's going to take the bait? How does she know she's going to end up pregnant? And how does she know that it's going to matter one way or the other? She can't control any of that. Right? The only thing she did is say, hey, I'm not just going to sit by and let life pass me by anymore. Come what may, this is what I'm going to do. This is the action I'm taking to try to fulfill my purpose in life. And as far as she can tell right now, it's not going to go well for her. Bring her out and have her burned to death. As she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law, I am pregnant by the man who owns these, she said. And she added, see if you recognize whose sill and cord and staff these are. I like that. I like that. You know, I like this woman. I like the fact that she said, you know what? I'm not going to be controlled by these things any longer. It may end up me dying, but I'm going to go out and I'm going to pursue my purpose. I'm going to pursue what I hope for, and I'm going to go and I'm going to do something about it, whether it costs me my life or not. And then she pulls this thing out and says, see if you recognize the sill and the cord and the staff. And Judah recognized them and said, whew, she's more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah, and he did not sleep with her again. But she's pregnant. And check it out. Breaking out into the light. Breaking out into the light. Listen, she took a risk. And sometimes risks don't look normal. Sometimes risks have to be taken that are a little unconventional. And again, like I said, I'm not saying if somebody comes to me for counseling and says a similar situation, I'm not going to say, hey, here's a Bible passage. But I love the fact that she said, I'm not just going to sit by and let this happen. You know, I was thinking this, I was melting into my recliner yesterday. And I'm thinking, I don't feel great. And Joy, well, I said it out loud, because Joy goes, it's because you've been sitting here all weekend. You haven't been doing nothing. It's her subtle way of saying, you're lazy. And your body's dying of atrophy, right? And I'm saying, can you get the mac and cheese? You know, and let me think about this. Maybe some apple pie, a la mode, you know. I was thinking, I don't feel very good. And she said that, and I'm like, you know what? That's exactly right. It's exactly right. But guess what? I don't have to just sit there. I can get up and do something about it. Listen, if you don't like the way the election went, and you don't like the way the world's going, and you don't like the way, you can do something about it. You know what you can do? You can't change the world. You can't change the president. You can't do any of that. But what you can do is you can love your neighbor. You can get out there and make a difference where you're at. You can get out there and be a friend, be a kind person, be a person that looks a lot like Jesus and affect your sphere of influence for the better. You want the world to look better? It starts in your home. It starts in your neighborhood. It starts where you work. We can do something about making this world better. If we want to make a change, if we want to feel better, if we want to, listen, we're surrounded by great people here at this church. We're surrounded by great people here at this church. No doubt in my mind, if you come and say, I need help, we'll get you help. We'll get you help. If you feel like you need to be somewhere other than you are right now, if you feel like you need to just stop letting life pass you by and you're just sitting there breathing to death, if that's what's happening, let us know. We will help. That's why we're here. We want to walk through life together with you to help your life be all that it can be, to have joy unspeakable and full of glory, and to walk this road and take advantage of the breath that we're able to breathe into our lungs while we can right here on earth and bring heaven down here. Right? Active hope. Where are you at right now? And where do you want to be? That's A, that's Z. How do we get there? How do we get there? We've been given this life to live. We've been given this life to go do. We've been given this life to love, to help, to look like Jesus. Now what? Now what? Right? As I walked through this, I thought, here's where I'm at, and here's where I want to be. You know? What are the things in my way? What are the things I need to stop? What are the things that I need to do? What are the things I need to add? Who are the people I need to talk to? What are the things that I need to do? Because I don't have... You know, you look, I watched a Martha Stewart documentary. Anybody else watch this documentary on Netflix? I watched it. I was amazed. I couldn't believe it. Like, this woman comes from, I mean, she was fairly wealthy to begin with, but, I mean, what she did, she was a billionaire. It came crashing down, but she was a billionaire. And to see, and just to be, and her thing is, I want to learn something new every day. That's what she said still today. I want to learn something new every day. And all this inspiring stuff. And I'm thinking, I don't do anything. You know, like I'm not, you know what I mean? Like when you see something like that, you're like that. But then it's like, you know what? I can't do that. I can't be a billionaire. Definitely not in the right line of work for that. Couldn't do it anyway. But here's what. I've got something even better. I've got a belief and a hope that I'm going to be fully taken care of for eternity. Somehow, some way. I don't know exactly what that looks like or how that process is, but I've got that. That's better than a solid nest egg. Way better. Way more motivating. And I've got this life that I've been given. Yeah, I mean, it's not, I'm not perfect. I'm not even close. It's not that I've got all these grand ideas, but man, I've got this opportunity. And you've got the same opportunity to take the gifts that we have, the talents that we've been given by God to go out and just live in a way that inspires others and helps others see the truth of Jesus Christ. Man, what an opportunity. Let's not wait for us to get to heaven and just breathe to death in the meantime. Let's get out there and live and bring that truth right down here so everybody can see it. Right? Let's not just sit back and passively let this world pass us by and beat us up and do everything else. Let's get up and do what we can do. I know I can't make the results happen. I know I can't make anything actually happen, but what I can do is I can get out there and make provision to let God do whatever He wants to do with my life. Right? Active hope. It's a story of Tamar. So let's get out there and let's truly live. Amen? God, thank you for this story. Thank you for, God, how much that you have given each and every one of us. Whether we are in a situation to influence many or influence one, what an opportunity to be active in our hope, to allow what's in us to motivate us to go out and be better, to be a people that reflect you. What a great thing. So God, just help us, Lord, as we think on these things, as we ponder this story this week. God, help us to take a look at our own lives and what are our hopes? What are our dreams? What do you want us to do? What are you motivating us to do? What are some things we need to make right? Who are some people we need to give a phone call to and make some relationships right? What do you want us to do? And help us to get out there and do it, to show the beauty and the glory and the truth and the way and the life that you've given us. So just help us. In Jesus' name. Before you play, I didn't finish this sermon. We're only halfway done. So can you go back to the sermon? No pressure. All right. Breaking out into the light. I forgot about this part. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. Ha! Isn't that cool? I wouldn't think so, but I'm sure it was. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand, so the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it to his wrist and said, "This one came out first." But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out, and she said, "So this is how you have broken out." And he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out, and he was named Zerah. And their names mean breaking out and in the light. And so as she went out and pursued her hope, and she went out and made it active, it took a while, but she finally broke out into the light. Isn't that good? You may sing.